We are going to be starting our Solventless 101 panel. We have Brad Melchenker, the founder of 710 Labs out here. We also have Ethan Waters, the social media supervisor. Thank you guys for coming.
What up, UCLA, Cannacon? Happy to be here. Wanted to include Ethan in this conversation because first off, he leads up all our social media and handles pretty much every direct message and communication we put out there in the world. But a big part of our core essence is education, and he's done a really good job embracing that core value of ours and taking it to the next level on social media and beyond. So super stoked to have Ethan up here. He knows how valuable he is to our company. I think Ted tried to hire him about an hour ago. So we're really lucky to have Ethan with us.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. And my name's Ethan Waters. I've been doing social media here at 710 Labs for the past 2 years. I graduated from Cal a couple years ago, so go Bears. But I'm really happy to be here today and just be able to get you guys some knowledge from Brad here, who's been in the industry for a very long time, as you'll find out here shortly. So
cool. Where do we begin?
I guess just talk about where you started in Colorado. Cool.
I've immersed myself in this plant for the last 26 years. I was always the weed guy in high school and in college, and even, there's a picture somewhere of my senior yearbook, but whoever put the senior yearbook in my high school together did the in 20 years section, and in 20 years under my name it was to own a greenhouse. And it just so happened to come true. And I've been in the cannabis industry on the legal side now for 14 years. Started in 2009 on the legal side, 1996 on the other side. And started in California, was brokering between growers and dispensaries. And then in 2009, when the Obama administration took office, they declared that they're going to leave it up to the states' rights to regulate and enforce. And that was where I kind of took my calling and said, I'm going to do this full time. Raised a little bit of friends and family money, built my first grow facility in Encino, California, right down the street from here. It was a 9-bedroom house. And we lit it up with LED lights way before LED lights were a thing for growing cannabis. It was a total failure. I think we got 1 pound out of our first harvest, and the next 14 years has been an amazing roller coaster of ups and downs. Moved to Colorado, so right as we had that horrible harvest.
And there's the photo there, by the way, most likely to build a greenhouse.
After that harvest, my friend introduced me to this dispensary in Encino called Kind Meds. And they were giving out dabs of concentrates back in 2008, 2009. And it was a full bar where there were bartenders giving out dabs, watching Lakers games and stuff. And I was like, man, this is the future. I took my first dab, and unfortunately I was higher than I'd ever been in an uncomfortable way. But I kind of saw where this industry was going and how concentrates were really coming on the scene in 2008, 2009. So I took that concept and moved to Boulder, Colorado from LA and opened my first dispensary called The Greenest Green. And we had a full dab bar in there. So CU students were coming in before class, $5 dabs. It was a time that I wish we could take me back to that time, because it was really fun. It was also a great time to introduce concentrates to the Colorado market. From that opening of that dab bar, The Greenest Green, to now has been, like I said, a roller coaster of ups and downs, wins and losses, losing the business, having to rebuild the business, getting letters from the federal government to shut down because we were too close to the dorms, and a number of other things, business partnerships that have went awry. But I wouldn't change anything. It's been amazing.
So when you first started out in Colorado and you had The Greenest Green, the dabs that you were giving out, were you producing the dabs that at the time when you first started that dab bar in Colorado?
Yeah, so we were making concentrates in my backyard. I'm sure you've seen a bunch of horror stories on the news the last 15 years about people blowing up their houses. Luckily, we weren't one of those people, but that's how we were making it. We were making it in a backyard, and yeah, we were and dabbing back then. You know, I think it was touched on earlier, but it got a really bad name because of how we were doing it and how high it was getting people. It wasn't. So what we were doing back then is heating up a titanium nail and getting it red hot and putting the concentrates on there, so you would cough, it'd be very combusting. You'd cough a while and get the sweats and get extremely high, and that's why dabbing got a bad name. Cut to 14 years later, and it's evolved tremendously, and it's more like sipping a glass of wine now for the flavor, as opposed to just trying to get you super high.
So definitely taking dabs themselves, the technology has altered a lot through time and improved a lot. But how has the technology of extraction changed from when you first started extracting to how we extract now at 710 Labs?
Yeah, so back then we started with hydrocarbon extraction, so we were using solvents, specifically butane, hexane, and other solvents, but mostly butane. So the solvent extraction, which we still do a little bit of, not too much, which is the live resin products that we make, it really strips everything from the plant, all the flavonoids, all the cannabinoids, all the THC, all the terpenes, in a way that's taking the cell walls and the membranes and kind of mixing them all with all those things. Whereas about 2013, 14, I noticed this concentrate market starting to shift from hydrocarbon extracts to solventless extracts, which means instead of using butane, we're going to be using water and ice specifically, only. And I noticed the group out of Washington, Seattle, Goat Organics, was kind of leading this wave back in like 12, 13 time. And I saw like all the glass collectors and the heady guys like really going in that direction. And I had tried solventless concentrates many times before that, but every time I dabbed them, it tasted like burnt weed, or like it didn't taste like the BHO extracts, which were much more flavorful. But it's because A, the solventless extracts weren't what they are today, and B, we were hitting it way too hot, like we were on the other concentrates. And when you dab solventless products, you got to dab it at a much lower temperature than hydrocarbon extracts. And we were ignorant. We didn't know that at the time. So our business has shifted in 2013, 2014 from hydrocarbon extraction to solventless extraction.
Got you. So can you explain the difference, I guess, between, so they're all live, like there's live resin back then and now it's live rosin. Can you explain kind of what live means and how where that's derived from?
Yeah, so when you're in the grow room, the plant is alive. As Ted alluded to a little bit ago, we kill that plant to smoke it. And you also kill it when you freeze it. However, you're keeping those live flavonoids and terpenes, the same ones that you smell in the room. When you dry a plant, you're going to lose about 60 to 70% of those terpenes from evaporation. When we fresh freeze the plant for extraction specifically, whether it's live resin or live rosin or solventless extraction, we're keeping that plant alive until you consume it, and we're keeping it cold. So live extraction means you're keeping that plant alive as long as possible and maintaining those terpenes.
And then we don't, but it is of course possible to extract from the cured flower as well, right?
Yeah, that's how I started. So we started with cured resin, which was dried flower, dried plants, and we actually won a few cannabis cups back in like 2010, 2011 with cured resin, and it was the Lemon G13 that we still work with today. Even the cured dry resin maintains so much of the terpenes because it's such a flavorful plant. So you can get good extraction from cured product. It's just not how we extract today.
So, of all of the products that we produce, of all the solventless, generally what you guys are considering as your favorite one, I'll switch over to now, is water hash.
So it took me years to figure out that water hash is like the crown jewel of the extraction game. It's the best of the best. It took me many years to understand this. When you're extracting, and do we have a picture of like the close-up trichome or anything?
I think the next slide has.
If you look at cannabis under a microscope, you're going to see, or even a magnified photo, you're going to see that there's thousands and millions of trichomes all over the plant, and they're kind of shaped like mushrooms. There's a head, and then there's a stalk. During the solventless extraction, the water hash process, what we're trying to do is isolate those heads. They're the best parts of the cannabis plant. Literally, everything that we do in the grow process, the breeding process, we're just trying to produce the best trichomes we can, the best resin glands. So in the solventless process, in the water hash process, what we're trying to do is isolate those and get rid of the stalks or the stems of the trichome and just isolate those trichome heads. And so with BHO extraction or hydrocarbon extraction, you're taking those heads and you're immediately getting rid of the cell membrane around the juices. The best juices in the plant are that trichome head. In BHO extraction, you're getting rid of that cell membrane and the trichome goes away, it's into an oil. In water hash, you're trying to keep those intact for as long as possible. That's why you do it under cold. So you're breaking those off gently in the water hash process and getting them separated.
So, for some folks here who might not be as familiar with what that process is to knock off those heads, could you maybe explain a bit what exactly it is that water hash technicians are working on in our facilities?
Sure. So in our facilities, the water hash technicians are in the cold room, about 40 degrees, for about 6 to 8 hours. Obviously, they have breaks, but they're in the cold room and they're using paddles to move around those trichome heads in a bucket of water and knocking those trichome heads off gently in the bucket of water. And then the water is now filled with a bunch of trichome heads, a bunch of stalks, a bunch of plant matter. And then we're taking that water and we're going to funnel it through a set of bags with different micron screens. And those screens are going to catch the trichome heads as well as all the plant matter. And then we separate the plant matter from those trichome heads in a process called sublimation.
I don't know where Michael's at.
So those are those trichome heads.
Trouble here. But yeah, these are the trichome heads that Brad was talking about in the actual water hash form.
So we take the water out through a sublimation process using a freeze dryer to remove the moisture, and you just have the trichome heads, and it's like a sand substance at cold temperature, and then at room temperature it melts down into an oil. And if you see we've moved on to rosin.
There you go.
Yeah, you can go back. You can go forward. So we take those trichome heads when we make rosin, and we squish them between heat and pressure, and we're getting rid of those cell membrane the cell walls, like we do in BHO extraction in the rosin process, where you're adding heat. The water hash, you're not seeing heat ever, which is why I love the water hash most, because you're getting that unadulterated trichome head resin gland in its purest form, like in the grow room, which is why I believe it's the best part of the cannabis plant to consume.
Why do other people sometimes disagree with water hash being a viable option for smoking frequently?
It's very finicky, so you have to dab it at a much colder temperature. You have to keep it cold, or else it's going to dry out and cake up. It's like the finest wine in the world. You have to really take care of it. You have to store it properly. You have to consume it very meticulously, or else if you dab it too hot, it really tastes like burnt weed or burnt popcorn. It's not a pleasant taste.
And then so Percy rosin here obviously is slightly more stable just because it's been pressed between the plates and it's able to coagulate into the one final form here. But what other sort of product lines are more stable, and how do you create a water hash product that becomes more stable over time versus a rosin? It's something that you need to, what sort of products can be made that are able to be shelf stable and don't need to be frozen over time? Is there a possible way in the process to do that?
So we have 3 types of rosin that we make. We make fresh pressed rosin, which needs to stay cold at all times. We need to keep it in a refrigerator or a freezer at all times, or else it starts to degrade. Then we have 2 other products of rosin called batter and Percy sauce, which are shelf stable. So we do an added process to those products to make them shelf stable. Although during that process, you're losing some terpenes, which is why I prefer the fresh press to smoke. Most consumers enjoy the batter and the Percy sauce because you can keep it out on your counter, on your dab table, on your coffee table, and you don't have to worry about it kind of drying out. So we stabilize that through a process to make it more shelf stable.
And in that process, do you often feel that the genetics are then misreflected in the end product, or you still feel that it's a good representation of each genetic when it's done well?
I think it's a great representation of each genetic when it's done well. However, I don't think it's the best representation of that genetic.
Understood. So we didn't make batter until very recently, which is known as cold cure throughout the rest of the industry. Can you kind of talk about why you had a bit of an apprehension to joining the cold cure club?
Yeah, I mean, at the core, we're purists. Skelly and I, another partner in the business, are real purists, and we, like I just touched on, enjoy the fresh press because you're getting that exact flavor from the grow room. You're taking that grow room, that plant, and getting it into a product that has never really seen much heat at all. Whereas the other products, you're going to introduce it to heat, and it's going to change the flavor profile of that plant. So that's why we held out for so long. But the consumer always wins, and we had to start making batter. So
Understandable. And then before we kind of move on here, just when it comes to selecting strains for hash versus flower, do you find that there's, I mean, I know that there is, but do you find that there's a difference between the process of hunting for each of those two strains?
yeah, if you guys watch the Alien Labs talk, they talked about genetics and breeding and pheno selection a lot, which is something that's core to our business as well. When we're doing pheno hunting, which we do around the same amount that Ted and Ian mentioned before, which is our 5,000 seeds a year or more that we pop and hunt for, most of the time we're hunting for solventless genetics. So really what you're looking for when you're looking for strains that will do well in solventless form is a type of resin. It's a tacky resin, it's a sticky resin. Whereas in hydrocarbon and even most flower strains for dried flower, we're looking for a much oilier resin. So the resin that when you touch the plant, for solventless products, for genetics, we want it to be very tacky, and you'll see the head kind of go like this. For other products, flower and hydrocarbon, it's very oily. It's like oily resin. So that's kind of the difference when we're looking for genetics for two different types of extraction or even dried flower, like Ethan mentioned.
Why do you think that solventless products are so important for the cannabis industry?
Man, that's loaded.
It is.
I think all products are important for the cannabis industry. Solventless specifically, you know, it's like I said, it's the finest wine. It's the best part of the plant. That trichome head that we're extracting is literally the be-all, end-all of the cannabis plant. There's 500 compounds in this plant. The trichome head carries, the trichome and the resin gland carry a lot of those, the ones that we want to smoke, the ones that we really want to consume. So I have nothing against the other types of products the plant has to offer. It's just what I've found that I enjoy the most.
So what sort of journey has it been like being able to make that solventless product more accessible to people? Like we see here, you know, we have the pods now and there's other ways. Puffco makes it a bit easier to smoke, but how have you seen that evolve over time?
So when I got into the solventless, consuming solventless extracts in like 2012, 2013, there was only a few flavors that really worked for solventless extraction, like the cookies and cream, a couple tangy phenos. But like finding solventless genetics that work was very hard. So we set out to do a lot of hunting genetic-wise to find like the whole pie chart of flavors in solventless form. Gassy flavors, berry flavors, creamy flavors, OGs. We wanted to hit every flavor profile with a solventless product. So since 2015 or so, we've really put together a genetic library that's focused on solventless genetics, that we can make all these types of products. Puffco's made it a lot easier to consume these products for sure, as opposed to having to heat up a dab rig with a torch and go through that process. It's a little intimidating. Now we've got it down to a point where we made our rosin into vape pods, which is best on-the-go device that we've found in terms of consuming solventless products anywhere you want to consume them.
So you touched on kind of getting a wide spectrum of flavors in the library, but how do you feel that the medium in which that flavor is grown affects its expression? And we talk about our living soil here a little bit. We grow in multiple mediums, but...
Yeah, so Ted and Ian touched on living soil a little bit earlier. We've been growing in living soil beds for the last 8 years. And what we've found is, by no means is it like mind-blowing better than the hydroponic cultivation that we grow in. 75% of our rooms are grown in hydroponically, 25% of them are grown in living soil. What we've found is a lot more oil content, a lot more, we've done side-by-sides, and we find that the terpene percentages in the living soil products are a lot higher. Now, we also have found on the flower side that it does pull heavy metals, like Ian was mentioning. It pulls a lot of heavy metals. We figured out how to amend our soil to counteract those heavy metals in the living soil. And I will say, it's a batch-to-batch thing. Some strains are really enjoying the hydroponics better, and some strains are enjoying the living soil better.
So how does that kind of affect the business when certain strains might not enjoy the soil better?
Yeah, I think it's a process that, again, Ted and Ian talked on. There's a lot of batches that we don't pass QC-wise because it's just not smoking right. It doesn't taste right. So we're disposing of those batches. This business is hard. It's really hard. But we set out on a goal to put out quality over everything, and it's been challenging over the last 14 years, but we're finally hitting a nice stride.
So keeping on the theme of getting a variety of flavors, and Ted and Ian talked about this as well. But what is the pheno hunting process kind of like for both hash and flower here at 710?
It's strenuous. So we're in 4 states. We're in Colorado, California, Florida, and Michigan. We do all our pheno hunting and hunting out of California, out of our Oakland facility. So we have 2 rooms that are just designated for R&D and pheno hunting. And it's a process. You plant a seed, and you don't get to put that cannabis strain in production for 8 to 12 months because you're going through the process. We're tasting everything, just like Ian and Ted are. We're going through the whole process, figuring out what we're looking for, what flavor profile we're looking for, what resin type we're looking for. It's in depth, and it's complicated, but it's the most fun part of this whole process. Finding new strains, finding new flavors that we want to present to the consumer.
And what are the things that you're looking for in your pheno hunt? And do you ever differ from your partner maybe and have some sort of disagreements with what to select?
Of course. So, for a good example is like we weren't able to, about 2.5 years ago, we weren't able to find a solventless strain that really presented the runts flavor profile. Runts is an amazing flavor profile. In flower, we wanted to capture that flavor profile in solventless concentrates. So we went on a hunt where we were trying to find a bunch of different seeds that had runts genetics in them, but also were crossed with strains that made great solventless products, like a Wedding Crasher, which is our Randy Watson. So we found, after hunting for about a year, a great pheno of Randy Watson, which is runts times Wedding Crasher. It yields well in solventless, and it tastes amazing. So we finally found that terp profile in the solventless form. And yeah, Skelly and I like different things, just like Caleb and Ted like different things. We always hunt, I grew up on OG Kush. Skelly does not like OG Kush. So it's just, it's one of those things that we always battle about, but we always find a middle ground.
All right, and then it looks like we have a little bit of time here. So I guess we kind of wanted to talk about why, indica and sativa and THC percentage are sort of overused marketing tactics when you're in the store or when you're looking for flower or hash, and what else you should be doing to look for your flower. What's your perspective on that, Brad?
Yeah, so we have a binder of all the fallacies in the cannabis industry that we put together, and sativa indica is one of those fallacies. So when you're looking at cannabis, we've been trained to look at sativa indica. The true definition of sativa indica, or not even the true definition, what it's describing is the physical traits of the plant, how it grows. Tall, skinny plants are sativas, and short, fat plants are indicas. That characteristic has little to zero dictation on how it's going to make you feel. So we don't ever like to describe our plants as sativa or indica or hybrid. It's just not how we look at the cannabis plant. The cannabis plant, like I mentioned, has 500 compounds in it. THC is one of those compounds. Also, when you look at how cannabis makes you feel, you need to look internally at your endocannabinoid system. You also need to look at how you're feeling that day, what you ate that day. It's not just about how this strain is going to make you feel. It's complex, but I believe that in order to find what works for you, it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of what you like, what flavor profile you like, how, what works with your endocannabinoid system. I think in the next 10 years, there's going to be doctors out there, and they're starting to trickle in, where you can go to a doctor and have him map out your endocannabinoid system, see what receptors are turned on, which ones aren't turned on. I've come across a lot of people that have never smoked weed before that have tried to smoke and they can't get high. It's because the receptors just aren't turned on yet. So it's complex. We're just learning, as those guys talked about. I believe we're still in like the first or second inning of this game. We're still learning so much, which is why it's so important for you guys in college to keep studying this plant, keep pushing it forward, because we're still so naive and ignorant about the plant. We still know so little about it.
All right, and then I think now we have a little time here if anybody has any questions. Again, we really appreciate Maha and the UCLA Cannaclub having us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This is awesome. Really cool.
Thank you guys so much for coming out, Brad and Ethan. It's such a pleasure. All right, so we have one question from our doc that I'm going to do, and then we're going to open it up to the floor. If anyone has any questions, think of them now. All right. So we have one question from Liana from Puffco. Your quality consistency seems paramount to your brand. How do you maintain this consistency across different markets and regulations?
Yeah, it's been the biggest challenge in scaling this business. And again, 4 states, we own and operate each of those cultivation facilities, and everything we do starts with the plant. Scaling quality is really hard in any business, in anything, in food businesses, in agriculture, in any businesses, and we've just kind of stuck to our core, which is quality over everything, and it's like quality over even making money. And we've had a very patient investor who's believed in that motto, which is like quality over everything, and that means even throwing out a lot of batches. We have thrown a lot of batches out that we don't pass through our QC process. So it's consistency. There's been other brands, and I won't mention them, that have scaled across the country in 15, 16 states. But you go to one state and you buy that product and it might be great. And you go to another state and it's just not good. And that was like one thing that we never wanted that to be the case for 710 Labs. We wanted to make sure wherever you get our product, it's the same quality and consistency.
Thank you for shedding some light on that. Does anyone on the floor have any questions? Please raise your hand. We got one right here.
Hey, what's up, man? Really love 710 Labs. Can you talk about the, like how you really amassed the following, the people that you have? Y'all seem to have like a tight-knit group of people that really stuck with y'all, and anything that y'all bring out.
Yeah, that's a good question. You want to take that one? I'm happy to. So, I mean, like when we started out 14 years ago, we really knew that social media was like the way to talk to our consumer. That's where most people were moving towards getting their knowledge. I will say that like our consumer base and our cult following is based on like they want the best quality, the biggest nerds. Like how many people drink wine and really care about how the grape was grown, what geography it's coming from, which part of the plant was the wine made from? Was it the whole cluster or was it just the grapes? That's how we kind of look at the cannabis plant. We nerd out on this stuff so much, and our following has really like followed in that footsteps of like really caring about these things. And it backfires too, right? Because people are like very picky. If they get something even the slightest wrong, we're getting a bunch of DMs. So we've had to build our customer service department up rapidly to maintain the level of the customer wants to see when they're paying for top dollar for product.
Yeah, and I think as far as social media is concerned, it's a lot of, and this is the product too, it's a combination of authenticity and transparency, and if there's a product that somebody's unhappy with and they message us about it, we're going to do everything that we can to hear them out and, do what we can to replace it as well, because that's just, we want to be transparent about everything we do, and like Brad says, they smoke everything that comes through like anything that's in your jar, anything that you're having at home is something that they would smoke, and that's kind of the whole part of the authenticity of the brand that I think is really important to people. And you see in our videos too, like it's just us telling you genuinely what is happening, whether it be in the facility or whether it be something good or bad too,
I think that's head on, like being honest and transparent. Like we have shit go wrong all the time, and we got to be honest with the customers about it. And on the quality side, like there's not a batch that goes out in Florida, Michigan, Colorado or California that we don't try first. We're figuring out how to get that shit back here to try it before it goes out, and I think the consumer understands how much we care. We just give a shit.
Thank you, guys. We do have one more question. What is your favorite product from your own line?
My favorite product is Skittles Water Hash. The flavor profile, if you guys can get your hands on Skittles, I have yet to find a strain that translates in any sort of robust flavor like Skittles. It's the